A soft alarm echoed across the control room of the Imperial Watch Station, floating silently above the edge of the Galactic Empire. Officer Kalen looked at the blinking red light on his screen and frowned. Something was entering their space, but it wasn't listed on any charts, and it wasn't sending the usual ID signal. He pressed a button on his panel. Unknown ship detected. No transponder. No known design. It's huge, he said, eyes wide. Within minutes, the message reached the Imperial Command Center on the capital planet. The High Council called an emergency meeting. They watched the footage from the watch station. An enormous dark ship, shaped like a long blade, floating slowly toward the Empire's outer zone. It didn't fire any weapons. It didn't speak. It just moved calmly, almost like it didn't care it had been seen. Captain Liner, one of the Empire's best, was called to the meeting. She stood tall and calm, listening to the High Council members argue. It could be a new alien race, said one. It could be a threat, said another. It's too quiet, Liner said softly. That worries me the most. She was given command of a fast response cruiser, the Viper's Eye, and told to intercept the unknown ship, investigate it, and report back. Her ship launched within the hour, heading straight for the coordinates where the strange vessel had stopped. As Liner's ship approached the unknown craft, the crew fell silent. The alien ship didn't look damaged, but it had no lights, no windows, no movement. It was as if it had been built by something, not alive. Still no response to our hails. Liner asked. No, Captain. We've sent over 20 messages on every known frequency. Her communication officer replied. Not even static. Liner looked at the main screen. The ship filled the view, black, smooth, and silent. Its surface had strange patterns, like deep carvings. The Empire had explored thousands of worlds and met over 50 different species, but nothing had ever looked like this. Suddenly, the lights on the Viper's Eye flickered. The engine hummed louder for a second, and then everything returned to normal. What was that? Liner asked quickly. Some kind of energy field, Captain. It's coming from the unknown ship, her science officer said. It's not attacking us, but it's affecting our systems. How strong is it? Liner asked. Strong enough to scramble sensors. We can't scan inside the ship. That was the first moment Liner felt a chill run down her spine. It wasn't just a ship. It was hiding something, and it wanted them to come closer. She called a small boarding team together, 5 trained officers, including herself. They wore light suits with oxygen tanks and scanners. They flew over in a small shuttle and attached it to a strange door on the alien ship's side. The door opened the moment they touched it. No lock, no password, no delay. It just opened. The team stepped inside. The air inside was thin but breathable. The walls were smooth and dark, with a low hum filling the air. Strange symbols glowed faintly along the walls, but there was no sign of any life, no machines moving, no lights flickering, just silence. This place feels wrong, one officer whispered. Liner didn't answer. She was too focused, her eyes watching every shadow. They moved deeper inside the ship. Their boots made soft sounds on the hard floor. The corridors twisted in strange shapes. Sometimes they would walk in a straight line but find themselves back where they started. It was as if the ship was watching them, playing with them. Suddenly, the door behind them slammed shut. What was that? Someone shouted. One officer ran back and tried to open it, but the panel didn't respond. They were locked in. Liner raised her hand to calm them. Stay focused. We knew this was a risk. She tapped her wrist communicator. Viper's Eye, do you read me? No answer. Try backup signal, she said. Still nothing. They were completely cut off. Then, in the quiet, a low vibration moved through the floor. Everyone froze. Lights began to appear along the walls, slowly pulsing like a heartbeat. The ship was no longer silent. It was awake. Captain, one officer said, I think it knows we're here. Linor looked around slowly. Her eyes narrowed as she studied the patterns on the wall. They weren't just symbols. They were maps. Star maps. Some of the stars were known. Others didn't exist anymore. And some had never existed at all. "We're inside something ancient," she said. "Something powerful." The humming grew louder. Far away, a door opened by itself, revealing stairs going down. There was a light below, soft and blue. Something was waiting down there. And the ship, though it did not speak, was clearly inviting them forward. Linor took a slow breath. "Let's find out what it's hiding." She stepped forward first, and the rest followed, their footsteps fading into the growing hum of the unseen ship. The deeper they went into the ship, the more unsettling it became. The soft blue light from the walls grew stronger as they moved forward, casting long, eerie shadows across the dark corridors. The hum of the ship was constant now, like the heartbeat of something massive and alive. Captain Linor led her team, her every step slow and measured. She could feel the eyes of the ship on them, even though they hadn't seen a single creature or any sign of life. She trusted her instincts, and right now, every instinct told her that they were being watched. The stairway they had found led down into a vast chamber. The walls were covered in strange, glowing symbols that Linor couldn't even begin to understand. The floor was smooth, made of a material that seemed to pulse with energy. As they walked deeper, their footsteps made no sound at all. In the center of the room stood an enormous object, like a control panel, but it was unlike anything Linor had ever seen. It was made of smooth black metal, and it had a complex set of symbols and buttons that seemed to move on their own, changing every few seconds. It was as if the panel was alive. One of the officers stepped forward, reaching out to touch the panel, but Linor quickly stopped him. "Don't," she said quietly. "We don't know what it does." The officer nodded, stepping back. Linor's mind raced. What kind of technology was this? The Empire had encountered countless alien species and their technology, but this was something beyond anything they'd ever seen. She motioned for the team to spread out. There were doors along the walls, some open, others closed. A low, soft sound echoed from behind one of the closed doors, almost like a whisper. Linor's heart skipped a beat, and she motioned for two of the officers to check it out. They approached the door cautiously, their weapons drawn. When they touched the door, it slid open without a sound, revealing a small room filled with strange equipment. In the center of the room was a large glass container, suspended in the air. Inside it was a body, human. The officers stepped closer, their faces filled with confusion and disbelief. The body inside the container looked like it had been preserved for hundreds, maybe thousands of years. The person was dressed in ancient earth clothing, their face pale, but strangely peaceful. "Is that a human?" one officer asked in disbelief. Linor stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the figure inside the glass. She nodded slowly. "It looks like it. But why is it here, and why is it preserved like this?" One of the officers ran a scanner over the body. "Captain, the readings are strange. The body's not decayed at all. It's like it's been frozen in time." Linor frowned. This was becoming more complicated by the minute. A human body, preserved inside a ship of unknown origin, deep in the heart of a strange and silent vessel. Nothing about this made sense. She glanced around the room. There was no sign of anyone who had placed the body here, no record of who this person was. But one thing was clear. The ship had been here for a long time. The technology inside was advanced, but the preservation of the body spoke of a much older time, maybe even centuries ago. Suddenly, the lights flickered. The soft hum of the ship grew louder, vibrating through the floor, making the air feel thick and heavy. Linor's team immediately raised their weapons, ready for whatever might come next. They all instinctively looked around, waiting for some sign of movement, but everything stayed still. Then, without warning, the body inside the container shifted. It wasn't a movement anyone could see with the naked eye, but the scanner's readings jumped. Liner stepped closer to the container, her heart racing. "What was that?" one of the officers whispered. The lights flickered again, this time with more intensity. Liner's instincts screamed at her to leave the room, but her curiosity held her in place. She could feel it, the pull of something important, something hidden inside the ship. But what was it? The body inside the container moved again, just a slight shift, like it was breathing, alive, but trapped in time. Liner reached out for the controls, trying to activate them. But before she could, a loud noise echoed through the chamber. A low, grinding sound, like gears turning, followed by the hiss of air. The container slowly began to open. "Get back," Liner shouted, as her team quickly scrambled away. But it was too late. The body inside the container slowly sat up, its eyes opening, but they were empty. The body moved, stiff and jerky, as if it hadn't been used in years, and then it began to speak, though the words were faint and broken. "Help. Earth. Warning." The voice was faint, barely audible, but it was unmistakably human. And it was asking for help. Liner's mind raced. The ship, the body, the strange technology. It was all connected. But what did it mean? Who was this person? And why were they kept in this ship for so long? Before she could ask more questions, the lights flickered once more, and the body went still. The chamber returned to silence. The soft hum of the ship faded, and for a moment, everything was eerily quiet again. Liner's heart was pounding in her chest. She glanced at her officers, but none of them could explain what had just happened. "This isn't just an abandoned ship," she said, her voice steady, but her mind racing. "There's a message here, and we need to find out what it is before it's too late." The ship was awake, and it was hiding something much bigger than they had ever imagined. The silence in the chamber was overwhelming, but it wasn't comforting. Liner's heart raced as she stared at the still body inside the container. Her mind was filled with questions, so many questions. She had expected danger, perhaps hostile aliens, or unknown technology. But this, a human body preserved in an ancient ship, hidden deep in space. What just happened? One of her officers whispered, breaking the silence. Liner didn't answer immediately. She was too focused on the body, now motionless once again. The message it had spoken, though faint and broken, echoed in her mind. Earth. Warning. The phrase didn't make sense. Earth was a distant, ancient memory to the people of the Galactic Empire. No one had heard from Earth in centuries. The planet had been lost to time, thought to be destroyed long ago. So why would a human from Earth be here, inside an alien ship, in the middle of nowhere? "Captain," one of her officers called from across the room, pulling her from her thoughts. "You should see this." Liner turned quickly, her pulse quickening. She hurried over to the officer, who was standing next to a strange terminal on the wall. The terminal looked like it had been built into the ship, its surface covered in the same glowing symbols that adorned the walls. "I've been trying to access this terminal," the officer said. "It's not responding, but look at the readings. They're different." Liner squinted at the terminal's display. The data scrolling across the screen didn't make sense at first. It was a mix of old Earth languages, symbols she couldn't recognize, and strange numbers. But there was one thing that stood out. A map. A map of Earth. This isn't possible," Liner muttered. "This map. It's Earth, but not the Earth we know. These coordinates. This is a place that doesn't exist anymore." The officer beside her looked confused. "But Earth was lost, Captain. The Empire has never found any trace of it." "I know," Liner said quietly, "but this ship, it's telling us otherwise." She tapped a few more controls on the terminal, trying to make sense of the data. The map flickered briefly, then a new set of coordinates appeared. Coordinates pointing to a location in deep space. It was a place far outside the Galactic Empire's known borders, a place that hadn't been explored in centuries. "This is where the ship came from," Liner said, more to herself than anyone else. "And these coordinates, they're pointing to Earth." There was a long pause as the officers exchanged nervous glances. Earth was a forgotten legend, a planet lost to time. No one truly knew what had happened to it. Some believed it was destroyed in a great war. Others thought it simply vanished. But Liner wasn't so sure anymore. The map, the preserved body, the strange ship, it all pointed to one terrifying conclusion. "This human," Liner began, turning to her team, "is from Earth. But not the Earth we know. This person, they came from a time before Earth's fall." The officers stood still, the weight of her words sinking in. The idea was impossible, yet the evidence in front of them was undeniable. This ship, this ancient vessel, had somehow preserved the human body and brought it here, across time and space. But why? What was its purpose? Liner's mind raced. If the person inside the container was truly from Earth's past, then what did that mean for the Empire? Could there be others like them? Could Earth still be out there, waiting to be discovered? She looked at the body once again. The human's eyes were empty, their face peaceful, as if they had been in a deep sleep for centuries. But there was something about the body that troubled Liner. It didn't look like it had aged a single day. And it didn't look like any ordinary human. There was something about its presence that felt unnatural. One of the officers spoke up. "Captain, if this is really Earth, why would they send a ship into the farthest reaches of space? And why would they send it here, to the Empire?" Liner didn't have an answer. All she knew was that the ship was ancient, and it had been sent for a reason. The message that the body had spoken, though faint, was clear. Earth. Warning. But warning about what? As if on cue, the ship's hum grew louder, vibrating the floor beneath them. Liner's attention snapped to the walls, where the glowing symbols were starting to shift. The ship was waking up again. But why? Was it reacting to their presence, or was it trying to communicate something? "We need to get out of here," Liner said urgently, her voice sharp. "Now." But as they turned to leave, the lights flickered, and a loud hiss echoed through the ship. The door they had come through slammed shut, sealing them inside. The temperature in the room dropped suddenly, and the air became thick and heavy. Liner's breath came out in visible clouds. "We're trapped," one officer said, panic rising in their voice. Liner didn't panic. She had been in dangerous situations before, but this was different. This wasn't just a trap. The ship was alive, reacting to them. It had a purpose, and it was now clear that the ship wasn't done with them yet. "Stay calm," Liner ordered. "We need to find out what it wants." She turned back to the terminal, her mind still racing. The ship had given them a message, but it hadn't finished yet. There was more to discover, more to learn. And somehow, Liner knew that the ship's secrets were tied to Earth, and to the warning that had been left behind. Liner's fingers trembled slightly as she pressed the terminal's controls again. The ship's strange symbols flickered and shifted, and the low hum of the vessel grew louder. It felt like the ship was alive, watching them, reacting to their every move. The cold air in the chamber made their breath visible, but it wasn't just the temperature. There was an unsettling presence in the air. The ship was waking up, and it wasn't about to let them leave without revealing its secrets. "Captain," one of the officers said, voice tight with fear, "what's happening? Why is it getting colder? It feels like we're being hunted." Liner didn't take her eyes off the terminal. The map of Earth was still there, still flashing with strange coordinates, but now something new was appearing. More symbols, more warnings. She tried to decipher them, but they made no sense. The ship's walls seemed to pulse with energy, as if the vessel itself was breathing. Each beat of its pulse felt like it was sinking into their chests. Liner glanced around at her team. Everyone was on edge, their weapons still drawn, but no one dared to make a move. The ship was a maze of corridors, and every turn felt like it was leading them deeper into something they couldn't understand. Suddenly, the low hiss of the ship's air vents stopped. The temperature dropped even further. Then came the sound of footsteps. They weren't the officer's footsteps. These were heavier, slower, and much louder. It was as if something was walking through the ship, something much larger than any human. Lenore motioned for her team to stay quiet. They all turned toward the source of the noise. The walls around them flickered and buzzed, as if the ship itself was trying to communicate. Liner's heart raced. Something was in the ship with them, and it wasn't going to let them leave easily. "Stay close," Liner whispered, gripping her weapon tighter. "We need to get back to the control room and find out what this ship really is." They moved quickly but quietly through the corridors. The footsteps continued, echoing behind them. No matter how fast they moved, the noise was always just a step away. It was following them. The officers moved as one, their weapons ready, but there was no sign of any enemy. The ship's atmosphere was thick with tension, and every corner seemed to hold new threats. Liner's mind raced. If the ship was alive, if it was somehow connected to Earth, then why was it so hostile now? Why had it brought them here? She needed answers, but she knew that the more they searched, the more dangerous things could become. They reached the control room again, but the door refused to open. The ship had sealed them in, just like it had done with the body earlier. Liner cursed under her breath and slammed her fist against the door, frustration building. But then the lights flickered again. A low hum vibrated through the floor, and the walls began to glow brighter, filling the room with a blue light. Something was happening. "Captain, look," one of the officers said, pointing at the control panel. The screen was flashing with strange, shifting symbols, and at the center of it all was a single word, glowing brightly. "Adodoakianing." Liner's breath caught in her throat. The word felt like a warning, a command. She backed away from the terminal slowly, her mind racing. The ship wasn't just waking up, it was preparing for something. But what? "Captain," the officer said again, her voice trembling. "It's the body. The human inside the container. The ship is connected to it." The message, it wasn't just a warning. It was a signal to something. Liner turned to the officer. "What are you saying?" "That the ship was waiting for the body to wake up." The officer nodded slowly. "Maybe. The ship is alive, Captain. It's reacting to us, to the body. It's waiting for something to happen. Maybe it's waiting for us to do something." Suddenly, the temperature dropped again, even lower this time. Liner could see her breath fogging in the air. The lights flickered one last time, and then the room was plunged into darkness. For a moment, there was complete silence, a silence so deep it felt suffocating. Then, the door to the control room opened. Liner took a cautious step forward, her heart pounding in her chest. The air felt thick, heavy with the promise of something dangerous. The ship was inviting them in, but Liner wasn't sure if that was a good thing. "Stay sharp," she ordered, and her team followed her, their footsteps echoing softly in the silence. They moved through the dark corridors, the walls now glowing faintly with an eerie light. As they turned a corner, they found themselves in a large chamber. The ceiling stretched high above them, and at the center of the room was the body, the preserved human, still lying in the container. But something had changed. The body's eyes were open now, and they were no longer empty. They were staring directly at Liner. A voice filled the room, soft but clear, as if it was speaking directly into their minds. "Help! Earth! They are coming." Liner froze. The body was alive, and it was speaking to them. But who were they? What was the danger the human had been warning about? Before she could react, the ship trembled. The floor beneath them shook, and a loud, deep sound echoed through the chamber. It felt like something massive was awakening. The ship wasn't just alive. It was about to reveal its true purpose, and Liner had no idea what she was about to face. The room was shaking, the lights flickering as the hum of the ship grew louder, more intense. It felt like the walls themselves were alive, vibrating with energy. Liner's heart pounded in her chest as she stared at the body inside the container. Its eyes were fixed on her, unblinking, almost as if it were trying to communicate something through sheer force of will. The voice in her mind came again, clearer this time, the words heavy with urgency. They are coming. Earth is in danger. The ship, it is a warning. Liner's breath caught in her throat. What was this? What kind of warning? Her thoughts were racing as she tried to make sense of everything. The ship, the body, the strange map of Earth, it all pointed to something much bigger than just an abandoned vessel. Something was happening, something dark, and it was tied to Earth. "We need to move," Liner said, her voice sharp and urgent. She glanced at her officers, who were all frozen in place, still trying to process what was happening. The ship trembled again, and the noise grew louder, a deep guttural sound that echoed from the very core of the vessel. Liner's team moved quickly, following her lead, weapons drawn, ready for whatever was coming next. They had no idea what they were facing, but they couldn't stay in this room. Whatever was happening, it was only the beginning. They raced through the corridors, the ship's energy pulsing around them like a living thing. The temperature had dropped so low that their breath came out in thick clouds, and the walls around them seemed to close in. The air was thick with the smell of something metallic, something ancient. The ship was alive, and it was waking up with an intensity that Liner couldn't understand. As they turned a corner, the floor beneath them shook violently. Liner barely managed to keep her footing, but the officers behind her weren't so lucky. One of them stumbled and fell, but before Liner could react, something moved in the shadows. Fast, too fast for her to catch a glimpse of. "Move," Liner shouted, grabbing the officer by the arm and pulling them up. But as she did, something massive slammed into the wall just ahead of them, sending a shockwave through the ship. The lights went out completely, plunging them into darkness. For a few seconds, there was complete silence. Then came the sound of movement. Something massive was moving toward them, its footsteps loud and heavy, shaking the walls. Liner's heart raced. Whatever it wasn't friendly. "We're not alone," one of the officers whispered, his voice shaky. "No kidding," Liner muttered, her grip tightening on her weapon. She motioned for the team to follow her, but they had no idea where they were going. The corridors all looked the same now, like a maze. They had no map, no guide, and no way of knowing how much time they had before whatever was stalking them found them. The ship's eerie hum was deafening now, like the growl of some great beast in the shadows. Then, without warning, the floor beneath them gave way. Liner barely managed to jump back as a huge section of the floor collapsed, revealing a massive chamber below. She could see glowing symbols on the walls, more complex than anything they had seen before, and standing in the center of the room, surrounded by machinery, was something that made her blood run cold. It was a massive creature, humanoid in shape, but clearly not human. Its body was covered in dark, armored plates, and its eyes glowed a fierce, unnatural red. It stood over 10 feet tall, its muscles rippling with power. The creature stared at them with a cold, calculating gaze, as if it were waiting for them to make the first move. Liner's team froze, weapons raised, but they were no match for this creature. There was no way they could fight it, not without risking their lives. "Captain," one of the officers whispered, "what do we do?" Liner's mind raced. She had to think fast. They couldn't outrun it, and fighting wasn't an option. But the creature didn't attack. It simply stood there, its red eyes focused on them, waiting. And that's when Liner realized something. The creature wasn't there to kill them. It was a guardian, a protector of something. But what? "We need to understand what this ship is trying to tell us," Liner said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. "It's not just a ship, it's a warning. And this creature is part of that warning." She turned to the officer next to her. "Get to the terminal. See if you can access any more information about this ship. We need to know who built it and why." The officer nodded, but before they could move, the creature's voice echoed in their minds, low and menacing. "You are too late. They are coming." The voice wasn't like the human message. It was deeper, darker, as if it were warning them of an impending doom. The ship wasn't just a relic from the past. It was a vessel meant to protect something. And now that something was coming for them. "We need to find a way to stop them," Liner said urgently. "Whatever is coming, we can't let it reach the Empire." The creature stepped forward, its massive form blocking their path. Liner's heart pounded in her chest. It was clear now that the ship wasn't just a warning. It was a battleground, and they had arrived at the wrong moment. The fate of Earth, and possibly the entire galaxy, was at stake, and Liner had no idea how they were going to stop what was coming. But one thing was certain: the battle had just begun.